Joining us on the Free Roll Podcast is Cameron with Tim, as always. We had SBG Black Belt Brad Bentley on the show today. Had an awesome time talking about jiu-jitsu and just pure jiu-jitsu, which I always super geek out about. We usually have MMA fighters, but getting in the way of just breaking it down to jiu-jitsu was awesome for me. I super geeked out.
You guys super geeked out. And that's why I was so quiet, because I don't even know enough to sound stupid. Because I don't even know what to talk about, but you guys seem to definitely dive in.
Yeah, when you guys listened, Tim was here.
I was.
He was present, I promise.
Chasing my dog back and forth from her barking. Hopefully not too many distractions.
No, not at all. We love her. She's our mascot. We love Ada.
Just a lot of control.
Well, we had a good time with Brad. We got to talk about a lot of good stuff. So stick around and get a geek out on jiu-jitsu with us.
Yeah, definitely.
Who's our sponsors?
Oh, yeah. Well, we got a couple. RhinoRush.com. If you swing by RhinoRush.com, we have a code, channel 9915, get you 15% off your order. And then also Pro Edge Nutrition. If you swing by ProEdgeNutrition.com and you use channel 9925, you will get a 25% off on our product. So that's about it. Those are our sponsors right now. So, alrighty, everybody. Anything else? We good? Brad, got it?
Yeah.
All shout-outs good? All right. Well, if nothing else, have a wonderful rest of your day. Oh, man, I'm so sick.
Shut up and sit down.
Awesome. We're here with SBG Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt and Coach Brad Bentley. Brad, thanks for coming and hanging out.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Brad is one of the coaches in multiple disciplines down at SBG, mainly Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's one of my coaches, so I'm pumped that he's here. I'm excited to talk some Jiu-Jitsu with him. We've had a couple fighters on lately. It's great talking MMA, but truth be told, I'm way more of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu junkie than anything else.
Let's just get this 35-year-old that doesn't want to punch anybody anymore.
Totally.
Just bring it down to the level.
I'm in the same boat. My punching days are behind me.
Yeah.
But it's good stuff. I think you and I have kind of a similar story, but I want to hear it from you. Basically, if I'm correct, you got into jiu-jitsu by pursuing mixed martial arts, not the other way around. Is that right?
Yeah, no. I started training at the gym a little over a decade ago. I was watching fights with my friends and really wasn't doing anything physical other than going to the gym. It's like, oh man, it'd be cool to actually do something, learn to box, kickbox. And you can tell how long ago we started training is I would like type on MySpace, like, oh, let's see if there's anywhere that I can go train. And Combat Fitness popped up. And at the time, you have like you and your friend, you're like, I'm not going to go in there alone. It's like, what if it's just a bunch of weirdo guys that
totally.
You don't know what to expect?
Tap out culture.
Yeah, it's and it's easy to kind of look and assume that that's going to be the case. So my buddy Nick Manfredo, who's actually back training, we went in the gym. We had a week trial and fell in love with the gym. But it was mostly I would go to boxing, I would go to Muay Thai. Every so often I would go to a jiu-jitsu class, but it was, super intimidating to kind of grapple. It's not a very intuitive thing to,
totally.
Regardless of whether or not you're putting heavy clothes or not, it's just, let's just go and like have someone sweat on me and then, stretch my joints beyond where they should go and choke me. And then I'm supposed to be really stoked and show up the next day.
Totally. And it's interesting that you describe it that way because it's always, I don't know if you ever run into this problem, but when somebody like a friend or family member says like, what's jiu-jitsu? And you're like I use exactly what you just said. Well, you kind of wrestle with people that try to break your arms and choke you.
Nah, I fool everybody now. It's like, do you like Sudoku? Oh man, it's awesome, right? You like problem solve through what you're doing, trying to figure out what numbers. I do that, but instead with numbers, it's body parts.
Smart.
What are you talking about? And then they're either really interested or you're a psychopath. And like, that's cool. I'm gonna just let you do your weird activity and move on.
Like, okay, and they just slowly back away.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, it's everything. So many people get into jiu-jitsu just due to fights, and it's funny. I started asking. I have a bunch of friends that after I moved to Idaho from Hawaii, a bunch of friends that I had in the punk scene there, and we all played in bands together. Everybody started training jiu-jitsu, and it's all just like,
wow.
Nobody talked to each other about it. It's just everybody started training. So I've got, lots of people that, I used to either watch their band or played with that. My buddy RK, he helps run like a Gracie school in Wahiawa where like he goes and heads out and trains with Huron and Hinner, and he's got like 3 or 4 stripes under them. And my buddy Drew's like a brown belt under Helson, and
wow,
I've got a lot of other people that just, they've got their blue belts, purple belts, and you're just like, how did we all just end up doing the exact same thing and taking the exact same route?
That is an interesting question. Like, really, how did that? Is it maybe just just because of the popularity, or is it because you have a very similar personality, and so that sort of, you're all rock stars, so and then you all kind of pursue this? Is there just a common thread with that stuff?
Well, I think that, especially with like the punk rock scene, and that's kind of where, as a late teen, early adult, that's where a majority of my friendships and my meaningful friendships came from, and part of it's about the music, but a lot of it's about that community and that culture that you're a part of. And you have people that, intrinsically, everybody wants to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves, right? So,
totally.
We're going to go hang out at shows. We're going to go do this. We're going to, go see this band together. And, jiu-jitsu kind of becomes the same thing. You're part of a tribe. You're a part of a culture. And it's a lot, you have a lot closer knit than you would like if I said, cool, let's go do beer league softball on there. That's so I think the culture and the community portion of that really feeds into why a lot of people from that scene kind of come in, and Ryan would be a good Coach Ryan from the gym would be another good guy to ask, because kind of same thing. That's we know a bunch of people from our scenes, and even when I was going after I'd worked for his band, I was all like, oh man, you've traveled, do you know anybody in Buffalo that I could go to the gym? He's all like, no, but I'll go get a hold of this guy from this band, see what they recommend. And within an hour, he's like, cool, go train here when you're hanging out in Buffalo. So I think that just, that kind of community, that kind of close-knit feeling that you get from, grappling, jiu-jitsu, MMA, lends itself to kind of what you already like about the scene.
Interesting.
In punk rock, other than just the music.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting take on that. I've noticed that through my experience, jiu-jitsu attracts really two types of people: the very, very artistically inclined people, and the very, very scientifically inclined people. And there's probably some crossover there. I'm sure there is.
Well, if you're going to be a good critical thinker, there has to be some level of creativity there.
Sure.
Right? It's if I'm just doing everything by the book, eventually I'm going to find something that just kind of stumps me. And if I continue trying to figure out the by the book answer to it, I may or may not get the answer I'm looking for, or get any answer.
Sure.
But if you can start kind of thinking outside the box, being a little bit creative, putting yourself kind of out there a little bit, you're going to fail a lot, but you have that opportunity where you might find answers where you didn't before. And I think that the big thing that jiu-jitsu does for me is it really has developed my critical thinking. And I think when you start being successful in jiu-jitsu, it's when you allow yourself to be creative with, what you're doing, experience a little bit of, failure, put yourself out there. Just like, if I go and do a paint by number, I can paint and make something look really cool. But, if I just decide to paint a big picture or, write a song, whatever, the first 3 times is going to be really fucking terrible.
Sure.
And, you get feedback, you kind of learn more things from there.
Learn your technique, figure out what works, figure out what failed.
Yeah.
Fair enough. One thing that you touched on was the community in jiu-jitsu. Do you think that surprises people coming into a combat sport and then being adopted into this family?
Oh, without a doubt. It's, on a daily basis, I deal with people that have had no experience training. Some of them may be familiar with, MMA or jiu-jitsu from TV or friends and family, but the biggest thing that I get from the gym is just people are so surprised at, the connections they make with people in classes and what they're doing, outside of just the technique. I think ultimately anyone can teach a really good jiu-jitsu class, but where you find really successful gyms, where you find really successful just centers, is just somewhere that's going to focus on developing that community. And I even saw that from different scenes in music. If you have got a good community around you, Hawaii was funny because it's so small that you'd go to big cities and you'd have your punk scene, your hardcore scene, kids that are into ska, whatever else. But with us, it was just, this is what we're into, so we're gonna go start a band, or we're gonna go watch our friend's band, or watch whatever's happening here, and then we're gonna make this community here, and we're gonna support you kind of regardless. And that's where it was a lot of fun, and it was really enticing to me as a teenager, because it's oh man, everybody wants to be a part of this. And you'll go other places where it's a very us versus them atmosphere in that city, and it's just oh well, you're into this band, well, we can't,
that doesn't fly
we
here.
Can't do this here. And I think to a point, it's getting better here in Boise, but you had that kind of us versus them, oh well, you trained there, well, I can't talk to you here. You guys are garbage.
It's almost like gangs.
Yeah, it's we're just not snapping with switchblades in our other hands. But ultimately we're all doing the same thing. That's awesome. And if you're happy there, and the culture that gym's created is keeping you there, then I want as many people to do as jiu-jitsu as much as possible. I was handing out flyers to other gyms, and I was just thinking about just through the years, just that, man, why do you train that place? That's, we're so much better. Where, when I shifted my focus to how can I make this somewhere that nobody would want to leave? How can I make this to where you're so invested to be in this place, you're happy, you're getting better, you're improving, you've got people around you that are just as invested with you improving as you are, then that's great. But if people, it's going to be a lot easier to convince those people to stay rather than someone that's kind of happy where they're at, coming at them with vinegar, this is garbage. So
This place sucks. Come over to my gym.
So I guess, the point with that is just, creating that kind of healthy community is really important to have something that thrives. And if you're just constantly fighting it, then and trying to infight within people that are in the same thing, what's the point? You're not gonna progress, you're not gonna get any better. It's not to say we compete, and I want a giant dinner plate size medal from Grappling Industries next week.
Totally.
But that doesn't mean that I'm just going to go up and say everywhere else is garbage.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it brings people in the sport, brings eyes to the sport. I mean, ultimately, it's better for everybody.
Yeah.
What separates a gym that has community and culture from a gym that has a cultishness, for lack of a better term? Because I think that's something that we all understand.
Well, people could argue, and I see people on here all the time. It's like, man, Straight Blast Gym people, they're kind of cultish with the way that they come in. So, I mean, it gets to be a fine line.
Mm-hmm.
But, I tell my kids this all the time. It's just kind of you educate yourself and question everything. It's you find what's important to you, and you make people want to be excited about it. I'm not telling people that they need to be excited about it or they're going to be excluded.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to create a culture and an atmosphere where people are just as bought into what I'm excited about, what I want to do as I am. And the best way to do that is through, giving your own personal experience, finding someone if they're having a hard time with something, or they've asked you about something, connecting it to them. It's important to not just have, I don't go into my classes just thinking, I'm this coach, I'm above everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
Type atmosphere. It's, we're all in the same thing, we're all equal. Maybe I've had a little bit more time doing what I'm doing. So my job should be having your journey be a shorter trek than mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give you everything that I can within my own personal experience to help make that possible, because I've touched the hot stove enough to try and help you not do it.
That's a good analogy. I like that. When did you get your black belt?
Almost a year ago.
Almost a year ago.
A year ago on April 16th.
Wow, coming up here quick.
Yeah, got my black belt. Was really tired, and then I went and watched the breeders with my wife, and then I passed out. Taught class the next day.
Sounds like a good day. And how many years was that from your start in jiu-jitsu?
Oh God, like 9 or 10.
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's when did I start at the gym?
Forever ago.
Yeah, we were still in Garden City.
Yep.
9 or 10 years. Just.
And when you started, it was no gi just at the time, or was there a gi at the time?
We didn't have a gi program when I started. Scott Tomitz wasn't at the gym.
Mm-hmm. Same.
I think we still had like that half and half where Alliance or the base was sharing
Mm-hmm.
the space with us, and they would do no-gi classes on Tuesday, Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
and we could do the no-gi classes, but everybody doing the gi classes had to pay extra. And I would just go in and, do the striking classes, and every so often jump into jiu-jitsu classes. And I think the real bug of it hit, we had... I think it was right before Scott came in. There was like the Northwest Submission Challenge. They used to do a submission-only tournament, which was really awesome, but super irresponsible now that I know how that tournament's run. They're like, no time limit, submission only. You just go until you submit.
It sounds so enticing until you either participate or see it.
Oh yeah, and then I was all right. Well, at the time, there was some weird sponsorship through Clinch Gear that we had at the gym, and Scott Jorgensen and Jesse were like, well, you sign up for this tournament, we'll get you a pair of shorts and rash guard. And I was like, sick! This will get me some new gear
Sweet,
for almost
training
the
gear.
same thing. It'll force me to do jiu-jitsu because, in my head, I was, oh, maybe I'll take a fight one day, and I was feeling pretty all right with boxing and Muay Thai, but I just needed to go into jiu-jitsu classes more, so it forced me in for like 2 weeks.
Nice.
Did a tournament and had 2 30-minute matches, and on top of that, had no idea about like weight classes or cutting. I think I competed at 185, and I was like 10 pounds under. I was like, oh, well, I'll just like...
I weigh 175. That makes sense.
Yeah. Night before weigh-ins, and just everybody's 20-plus pounds bigger than me. But I had so much fun and just caught the bug after that, and it's all I wanted to do. And then when Scott came, we were doing more no-gi. We moved to the new spot that we're at now, started implementing a gi program more, and just really lived in the gym. That's if I wasn't working, I was training as much as I possibly could, and I just, like, from white to blue belt, I competed so much. Like,
perfect.
Just I couldn't get enough of it, and I've last year before my son was born, I was getting into boxing a little bit more with Coach Daniel, but most of it was just getting back in the swing of things. I'd never want to box, but it's like I kind of miss doing it. It's fun, but if I'm spending time at the gym, I've got someone there, I want to do jiu-jitsu.
Totally. Yeah. I hear you. Same. How was the transition once we started implementing the gi from the no-gi? There's a lot of people who, especially from the MMA background, have a really difficult time with that transition.
I mean, I think we all preferred no-gi because we all kind of trained like assholes.
True that.
We're just like, oh man, I'll just be fast and move and be athletic, and the gi will kind of slow me down a little bit. I tell Jesse all the time, it's like, man, I wish we would have trained like we do for the last 5 years for the entire 10 years, because I would have got injured less and got better way quicker. It was just one of those things. I don't think that I really started gaining an appreciation or understanding for it or of it until it had been a few months to a year of just kind of playing around and looking for it. I think it was still early enough in my jiu-jitsu career where, I'm just kind of awkwardly fumbling through everything.
So after you adopt the gi, obviously the belts came later in your progression, obviously was indicative of that. Do you remember when you got each belt?
I got my blue belt about 2 years into just training jiu-jitsu. And we had like a real weird kind of jiu-jitsu story through the gym, and having that initial alliance affiliation, then that fell through, and then we had another guy come in, and it just didn't really work out, and then we were kind of guideless. And then when Scott came in, he took it over. It was awesome, but he was also a blue belt, like a really well-traveled blue belt.
Yeah, like a 7-year blue belt.
Yeah, that shouldn't have been a blue belt. It's one of my favorite memories was we went down to a tournament in Utah, and he wasn't going to compete as a blue belt, so he jumped into a brown and black belt division and just ruined everybody. This brown belt guy who probably outweighed him by about 10, 15 pounds just got so pissed and threw a chair across the mat.
Wow.
So it was tough to kind of get that progression, and ultimately at the time it didn't really matter to me. I just, especially you kind of get that I'm a no-gi guy. I'm not too worried about the belts.
Sure.
But when I started competing more and competing in the gi, I was having a lot of success at white belt towards that year and a half and 2 years, and I was just like, man, I'm not being challenged. I don't think it's good for where I'm at right now to be competing as a white belt. So around that time, we kind of re-hooked up with the people we were initially with and got my blue belt. And then, was funny enough, I stopped competing a lot after that. Just school and life kind of took over. I was a blue belt for a few years. I got my purple belt about 6 years ago. As right before we started becoming affiliated with SBG. Mm-hmm. During that time with the people we were with here, Scott, in the course of like 3 months, went from blue belt to purple belt to brown belt very quickly.
It basically got him caught up.
Yeah, they're just like, okay, here we go. So received my purple belt. It's funny looking back at pictures, just like we all have so much hair.
Yeah, it was all beards, hair, and purple belts.
Yeah. Received my brown belt. That day is one of my favorite days. Brown belt is we had Coach John Frankel out from Korea. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite coaches in the organization. I love Coach Frankel to death. It's my favorite time of the summer. I get to learn a bunch of cool jiu-jitsu and drink beer with a real life wizard. But Coach Ryan and I was working doing merch for his band for that summer. They were doing a small run of shows through the Northwest, kind of getting back before their singer got married. And we went in, and the night before we played, Misery Signals played a show in Portland. We packed up, loaded both of Ryan's kids into his brother's Prius.
Wow.
And drove just overnight from Portland to Boise.
Jeez.
Showed up, took like a 3-hour nap, did the other half of this seminar, and proceeded to do like an hour and a half Ironman for our brown belts. And it's like when everybody got their brown belts, Ryan, myself, Freddie, Jake, Bill, I think I don't know. I think Bill and Mike had already got their brown belts before, and then Eric. But we were just so burnt out from just driving overnight, and came in and did this entire Ironman. So it's a funny story because it's just we kind of had an idea that it was going to happen when Frankel was in town. So the entire night we're just like, fuck.
This is the worst time to do this.
There's just this looming specter of just, an hour and a half of people trying to ruin your life.
True. Especially it seems like the higher the belt that you're getting, the more everybody just tries to murder you.
Yeah.
Because like blue belts go, and like white belts, of course, always go crazy. Other blue belts maybe a little bit. And then from that point on, it's pretty smooth sailing. Then when you guys all get your black belt, like literally every person from start to finish is trying to rip you apart.
Yeah. Listen, I know you're great at jiu-jitsu, and I'm super tired right now. I don't care if you tap me.
You don't have to prove it to me when I'm exhausted.
Yeah. And ultimately, you're just going to make me look at how much you're spazzing at the guy that I'm watching you roll with as I'm on my back hanging out. I'm just going to toe hold or wrist lock you right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make it quick. I'm not going to feel bad about it.
You're going to be done. That's going to be it.
Because I don't want you to just sit there and be a jerk the entire time.
That's fair.
But yeah, last year, 2018, I just made all the big changes. It's got a black belt, got a baby. It's
jeez. Big year.
Yeah, it was awesome though. It's to be kind of a black belt, among people that I really respect. Mm-hmm. And I kind of you don't want to compare yourself to other people, but at the same time, like, we've got so many talented black belts within the organization, and not just like talented competitors, just super smart coaches. Mm-hmm. And that's what you kind of measure yourself against. It's it's easy to just and I had plenty of them when it was brought up to me, just anxiety attacks about it.
Well, it's interesting, like at black belt, that's different from the other belts is both from a competition and from a just experience standpoint, is if I'm going to go face another blue belt, purple belt, whatever, they're relatively within the same few years of training that I am, right?
Yeah.
If you're a blue belt, you're going to face somebody who's a new blue belt up to somebody who's been a blue belt for 3, maybe 4 years, but that's kind of it. Like that's the long end of that, except for unless you go against Scott in his 7-year blue belt fight. But with black belt, whether it's competition or training, I mean, you're a black belt categorically the same as somebody who's been competing for 5 years, 10 years, and then you have your Matt Thorntons and Chris Howders. You're also a black belt along with those guys, and they've been black belts for 20-something years.
Oh yeah, that's the first time I rolled with Matt. For those of you that don't know Matt Thornton, he is a giant. He's 6'5". The first time I rolled with him, he was well north of 250 pounds, and the entire time, there's nothing I can do. And you've been a black belt longer than arguably twice as long as I've been doing jiu-jitsu. You have had your black belt. And then that panic sets in, and you stop doing everything that you should be doing, which led into really one of the best pieces of advice I ever got in my jiu-jitsu. Is we probably rolled for 10-15 minutes, and again, I'm 155 pounds. He's got me outweighed by 100 pounds, in addition to the previously mentioned experience level. And, I'm just tired. I'm, near hyperventilating, just like, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And he looked at me. He's like, you're too good at jiu-jitsu to be as tired as you are. And it really kind of like stuck in my head. And I was like, oh, it's like, it doesn't matter if you're on top. It doesn't matter if you're on bottom. If you are just pushing so hard where you are exhausted, I am going to win. And it really kind of shaped the way that I started playing a little bit more, to where, it's not about, I think I talked to a couple people, especially we got a competition coming up here. I think a lot of people, when you hear the term be first, it's just people, it's like, oh, I just got to be faster. I got to be better than that. And really, you just have to be more deliberate than someone else. I can be deliberate and still get someone to react to me without having to be physically faster than them. And it's why you have people that maybe don't have the edge in athleticism or speed that you might have with a younger athlete, that can still just stay 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of the other person. So it made me be a lot more deliberate with what I do in my jiu-jitsu, a lot more thoughtful and a lot more aware of how I'm breathing. Kind of going back to the old gym days, is we had Uriah Faber out for a seminar.
I remember.
And then it was the night after Brian McDonald, happy belated birthdays, last fight for the XFS.
That's right.
But we went out, and that was a funny day. I was so hungover because I was an idiot in my early to mid-20s, like most of us are.
True.
Show up this seminar, just hungover. We're warming up. Uriah Faber's just sitting there, like, yeah, every time I train, it's like I'm in a simulated fight to the death.
Wow.
And I just sat there. I was like, man, that's intense.
Great.
I don't know if I'm into that. But kind of to Matt's point, it was the same thing, but it was, I guess, a little bit more thoughtful way of terming it. But right now I'm focusing a lot on, how can I kind of set that tempo of a roll or what we're doing without having to be faster, without having to kind of use the athleticism that, I'm in my mid-30s now. I'm not going to always beat people that are signing up to our gym.
Totally.
And that's
the attributes are different. Yeah,
and that's exhausting. I love being able to train in some form of another, 6 days a week. It's, I kind of change the way I train depending on, how the day is. But, I can do 6 days a week without having, feeling like garbage for most of my life.
It's an interesting thing about jiu-jitsu is the longevity of it. It's peculiar because it's a combat sport. You're stretching joints, you're working hard, you're choking people. It's also one of the few sports that you can do basically forever. I mean, you can't do that in boxing. Nobody boxes after like 45 or 50, and if they do, they're super brain damaged.
Yeah.
There's no longevity to it. And even outside of combat sports, like football players and stuff, like you see the greatest football players, they retire when they're 30, and by 40 their body is so broken down they're never going to like step on a field and toss a ball around again.
No.
It's interesting that way, that like a combat sport where you're trying to kill each other, you can actually just do that forever.
Yeah.
And you can start at any age.
Yeah. It's, one of the first conversations that I had with Coach Matt when he was here, we went out to dinner and just kind of getting to know each other a little bit, and we were talking about, kind of how I started training, and it's like, I started doing boxing and Muay Thai, and really just the longevity of it, it's not there. As I don't want to get punched in the head anymore. I've got 3 kids that I want to be able to have conversations with in my late 40s. I want to. I don't want to deal with headaches all the time.
You want to remember your 30s?
Yeah. The 20s are a loss.
Already gone.
Yeah.
Already
so
gone.
Let's at least keep the 30s going. But if you had someone like come out of thin air, like in a flash of light, and they're like, "Oh man, I'm gonna give you something that's really good. It's gonna be you're gonna be so happy. You are going to love it. It's going to be a big portion of your life. It's going to give you all these, important, fulfilling relationships. But when you're 40, you need to stop."
Oof.
You would look at him and like, man,
Oof.
You're a real dick.
That's heartbreaking. Jeez.
But and to a point, like I think that's how striking arts are. And
Totally.
It's not to say that you can't train boxing, you can't train Muay Thai as you get older, but it's a lot different than the way that I can train jiu-jitsu.
Totally agree.
I've got people that are in their mid-50s that are training the exact same way, doing classes, doing live rolls that I do, that younger athletes do, that you just don't see. On Wednesdays, how many people over the age of 35 do you see, lacing up, the 16-ounce gloves?
Nope.
Yeah, it's it's a different speed, it's a different thing, and it's just there's too much out there that is telling you don't take blunt force trauma to your head for me to want to go do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, it's just I'm glad we both got to the point where we just decided that this is not worth it. There's no longevity to this whatsoever. And ironically, like some of my biggest injuries that I've had for years, I wouldn't say injuries, but just nagging issues with my body comes from boxing, but it's not like the head trauma. It's like my hands are jacked up from just hitting bags and pads for years.
Yeah.
My shoulders are a mess, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where as many times as I've been Kimura'd, armbarred, choked, like really nothing that, keeps giving me any problems from that at all.
Yeah. And, a lot of being able to do that in jiu-jitsu is it comes with training smart. It comes with kind of knowing your body a little bit better. I definitely don't let people touch my head as much as I did, white belt, blue belt, where you're just like, you got a cross face, whatever, idiot. I'm going to still come up on top, and then
I'm fine.
Your neck hurts for the next 3 months here. So, being aware of that, and just being aware of when I'm on the mat, I don't care if someone taps me.
No.
I'm not going to go home in my, 9-month-old is going to have his first words. It's like, you're a real pussy, Dad.
I'm disappointed in you.
You're going to need to leave. Go out, buy some cigarettes, whatever the case is. I don't want to see you anymore.
He probably wouldn't even call you Dad. He'd probably call you Brad. Call you by your first name.
It's just like, oh man. But I started doing yoga a lot more. Like when I knew that was improving because I would go and get a haircut from my brother, and every time he would go to shave me, like my neck was so messed up that like I could turn my head like that much. So he'd have to push my neck all the way across, and the entire time just like,
This is horrible.
And he just feels all the tension. He's like, man, I felt really bad that I had to shave you. That's all right. And he's like, oh man, like your neck moves freely. Oh man.
So much easier. This is so much easier.
Started doing yoga and being thoughtful about what my body is, being, trying to make sure that the things that I are doing are perfect practice, not just, going through reps for the sake of going through reps.
Totally. I mean, every rep you do is building a habit. It can be a really shitty habit, or it can be a really useful habit.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely built a bunch of shitty habits off the bat.
I think we all did.
Then you go to seminars and you get shown something. You're like, fuck, I've been doing this wrong for 10 years. I'm an idiot. And of course, that's the way that you do it. So, I look forward to that in, another month when Coach Matt comes out, because inevitably it happens. And I just go, you asshole.
And it's always the most, simple details.
Yeah.
Like, I've audibly said at seminars, God damn it, followed by something that's just like, now I'm going to turn my hand this way instead. And I'm just like, God damn it. Seriously? That's a total game changer. It's so easy.
And it's, those things are fun. That's, I love dumb bullshit in jiu-jitsu. It's so great. And there's so much dumb bullshit that you can do in jiu-jitsu that, your personality leads into it. And that's one of my favorite things about jiu-jitsu is regardless of your physical attributes, regardless of, how big, tall, skinny, fat, whatever you are, it works for everybody fundamentally. And then, you engage your personality into it. Mm-hmm. And, Coach Matt talks all about time. I can have like a 15-minute conversation with someone and know how they play jiu-jitsu. It's so true. Mm-hmm. And, my wife always says, she's like, I love watching you play jiu-jitsu because you totally like to fuck with people. And it's like, and then I'll go look at your Facebook feed.
And it's you fucking with
and
people.
It's me fucking. It's probably why I don't have an Instagram anymore.
Probably. You're in Instagram jail.
I have an Instagram now, but I just can't use the app. So it's like the whatever the Winco brand soda is. Mm-hmm. Or if
the Shasta.
Yeah. Or you go and you're like, oh man, I just want like a real tasty beer, like just give me the best beer you got, and somebody just like puts like a Coors Light in front of you. And you're just like, all right,
cool.
I guess this will do. I'm not gonna say no.
It's slightly better than no beer.
Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah.
What's the right way to do a seminar as a student?
I think it kind of starts varying when depending on your belt level and where you're at. I think early on, just getting your reps is really important for anybody. I always try to have, for myself and other people, write notes afterwards. Mm-hmm. Just because I think it's really important to kind of use that recall rather than just have it kind of float off into the ether.
Yes.
And just the physical act of writing something down. There's something about kind of helping make that mental connection that helps your retention for that. If it's something that you're really into, Coach Ryan now, he videos it and then, go through Evernote sharing about the main things so that you can go through. But ultimately, with whether it's a seminar or a class where it's like, oh man, I want this to be better, and I want it to be a part of my game, you have to drill it. You have to put yourself in those situations, and that could be something as, boring as, all right, I've got open mat time, instead of doing, a 5-minute round where I'm just doing whatever. All right, maybe I learned a bunch of mount escapes here, and I'm going to make sure that I'll go through my notes, do everything that I'm supposed to be doing according to my notes, and I'm just going to escape. The moment I escape, or if I get submitted, I go right back to that spot, and I just keep putting myself in there. And at the end of the day, you write what went well, what didn't go well, and then you go back and keep doing it. So I think if you go into a seminar just trying to expect to learn and do everything that you're shown, especially, we have coaches.
Knowledge by osmosis.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens, but I mean, we have coaches that come out and do 4-hour seminars for 2 days, and it's just, your Michael Richards and UHF, like letting the kid drink from the fire hose, just getting blasted against the wall. You're going to get discouraged. But, find the things that are most important, talk to your coaches that were there, and I think that's a resource that can always be used better. I know that I need to use it better sometimes. It's just talking to other coaches, talking to people that were there, getting feedback here. Because, I think we were talking about earlier today, we're not competing against each other, but there is like that little element of an arms race.
Yeah, totally.
So sometimes you're just like, oh, well, I don't want to talk about this because they might find my secrets. But ultimately, how are you going to get better? It's, you collaborate. Everything's very open source in jiu-jitsu.
Big knowledge share.
Yeah, it's when you try to hide everything, that's when I've been to plenty of schools that this is what we do, or like, when the black belts roll with their students, they're just trying to assert their dominance, or pee all over their students so that way they know who owns them.
Look how much I know.
Yeah, and it's okay, cool.
And these are my secret bag of tricks. You can't know those yet.
Yeah, and or you can do it. You just have to pay me, $150 for a private lesson, and then it becomes a transaction. Which I love doing private lessons here, but when someone asks me a question, I'm gonna tell them. The amount of time that I have to invest in someone's really kind of dependent on the situation, but you share, you get better, and it forces you to get better. When somebody asks you a question, you teach, like, you reinforce that those important things to yourself even more. And if someone knows what you're doing and you have to figure out new ways to deal with that defense, you're getting better. That's your success isn't just I'm successful with that technique. If I sit there and play, I was like, as a kid, I would always play NHL 95 on the easy mode. It's like, oh man, I went 84-0, sick. But then it's not really fun. And, you have to start figuring out how to play against, more challenging opponents. And it forces you to, rather than, I'm going to do the same pattern every time, I have to kind of figure out about it. And it sucks and it's frustrating. And you leave just going, all right, I'm going to go back to what I was doing before because this isn't working out. And I'm just getting smashed by people that shouldn't be smashing me. If you go do that, you're never going to improve. It's the nice thing about jiu-jitsu is you're constantly developing yourself into a better version of yourself. And I think that's the best thing that it's developed for me, for something that I want to pass on to my students, to my kids, is if you try to compete against everyone else, or compare yourself to everyone else, you're going to be fighting a losing battle.
Sure.
If you, and it's not going to be fun, and you're going to be more likely to quit because, you're just going to think, man, everybody's getting better than me. Especially you have those times where you get injured and things, and you see people like pass up. You're just like, oh man, everybody that I was training with is a blue belt now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sitting here. I haven't been able to train. Well,
And people you used to crush, now you've taken some time off, you come back, and now they're either a challenge or they're beating you.
yeah. Well, you should be happy for them, because if they're not, then they suck at training.
Yeah, there's a problem in the training at that point.
You'll get better by accident just by showing up, but you just, when you go into class, be better than you were before, and just find those opportunities. So back to your point about seminars, approach it being open, do the movements, perfect practice, not just practice, because if you're going through the motions, you're going to make bad habits that aren't going to work. And then when you're making bad habits that don't work, you're going to try them in a live situation and not trust that technique and never try it again.
Yeah.
And then, if it's something that you're really interested in, take your notes, use your notes, and put yourself in those situations and to improve and use your resources.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I definitely notice the differences in the times that I take notes and the times that I don't, because you do a 4-hour seminar. Let me tell you, whatever I learned hour 1, I do not remember by hour 4, other than like the positional stuff that translates the whole time. But whatever that submission was, I'm just like, I don't remember any of that.
Especially like when I'm at seminars where you're actively working from a bad position and you're just exhausted, and by the end of the day, I just want some food, I just want a beer. I kind of want to shut my brain off and my body off for a second.
Yeah,
so while you're doing that, you just make your notes.
Just make your notes. Yeah, I think at the last seminar when we were going over guard, it was keeping guard, and I was going with gun. He was my partner, and I think by the end of the day, we both just audibly said to each other, just like, I hate you. I don't want to be in your guard anymore. I don't want to train with you. Just get away from me. Because it was so effective and simple, but at the same time, we're so tired, just beat up.
It's so good. Oh, gun. Fucking gun.
Fucking gun.
I love it. Well, and that's the other thing now is like another cool thing about jiu-jitsu is Gun is one of my oldest best friends in the world, like godfather of my kid, and like having him back in Boise training like a couple weeks ago, getting to tie a purple belt on him, like that's super awesome. It's I've got another one, Nick, who I first started training with, and he started doing striking classes the same time I did, and he ended up having a semester abroad and getting busier with school and getting into school, and life happens, and he stopped training. I kept going on, and over the years, like when I started training jiu-jitsu more, it's like, oh man, like this would fit your personality really well. Like we process things the same, and he never liked going to jiu-jitsu classes because it was just claustrophobic. Like every reason that you wouldn't want to go to a jiu-jitsu class, like you're gonna have someone just heavy on top of me, sweating on me,
trying to hurt me,
and I'm there's a panic that can come with that. And he finally started coming back in, and I've got two of my best friends that now train, and Nick's, after 3 years and a bunch of injuries, he's on his way to getting close to his blue belt.
Nice.
I've got my friend Adam, who's busy with his work and family life, coming in and train. So it's cool, in addition to friends that I haven't seen in years that I moved away from, starting to train, like being able to start sharing it with people that they're just important people in my life, and then kind of seeing the cool benefits that it has for them too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you obviously got your black belt, and now you were just talking about the fact that you're the guy giving out belts, giving out time belts on people, and that's everything up to brown belt. So 2-part question for each level. One, give me just like a blurb, just a back of a book synopsis of what each belt level means to you and what you look for to move somebody to that belt.
Oh man, I gotta think about things that like I haven't thought of. Blue belt, I think, is a belt of competency. You can use jiu-jitsu in all challenging situations. Like, you may not be successful the entire time, but really the difference between a white belt and a blue belt to me is if you're failing but you're also using jiu-jitsu, then that's fine. Your timing, everything will come in, but you're creating the habits in spite of your fight or flight response, in spite of everything that you want to do to get better. So you have a level of competence. You can stay fairly safe, and if you get in a fight with like an average Joe and you go to the ground, you're gonna be fine. Those are the things that I look in for a blue belt. There's like a good article. Like, I always look at it every time we're talking about belt promotions. Chris Howder kind of wrote up like his thoughts on it. Purple belt, you've started as a blue belt, kind of gaining techniques, developing your game. You're developing a much deeper understanding of what jiu-jitsu is. And I think that a blue belt and a purple belt kind of knows what they're doing a little bit more, obviously. But they're a lot more deliberate with what they're doing, their setups, their things. They can give a brown belt, a black belt, a pretty challenging role, even without their physical attributes being introduced. And then you have that fundamental understanding of jiu-jitsu to where I don't think that purple belts necessarily have to teach, but I think once you wear that belt, you do become some sort of a leader on the mat, to where if someone comes up to you like, oh man, like I'm having some trouble here, or like, how did you do that? And you go, I don't know, I just moved my body. I'm not gonna advocate for you to get a purple belt, just because to me, I want you to have an understanding where you're kind of in a leadership role. I want you to be able to communicate that. And it, like, nothing drives me more crazy, especially now, and we're so spoiled with good instructors, than going to like a seminar or going to another gym or class, and you have someone that is so obviously they're just naturally good at using their body to do things, where they don't have to try, they don't have to think about things as much as everybody else. And they teach a class and just go, yeah, we're going to start here, and then I want you to do this, this, and this, and it's like a bunch of weird movements, and you kind of look in and you're just like, oh man, I don't know what you just did. We just had a seminar that I went to a couple months ago that was totally like that. Great black belt, super high level talent, but the way that he communicated is like, oh man, you don't have to try to do things very hard, because you're a great athlete and you can just communicate. And I just spent $100 to watch other black belts around me be as confused as I am, and then have to figure it out 2 weeks later when I've had some time to process. That was the nice thing, is like looking around, it's like, all right, I'm not an asshole. The other black belts here are kind of as confused as I am, so I'm on the level. But yeah, that understanding. At brown belt, I mean, you've kind of got a certain mastery of everywhere in jiu-jitsu. You know what's going on. You know, you've kind of developed your game, your processes. You're not really making mistakes as much, you know, and the jiu-jitsu that you do is going to be a lot more effortless when you're doing it. Because, you know, when you're doing jiu-jitsu right, you know, it should all feel like a magic trick.
Totally.
It's like, oh, man, that was way easier than I thought.
More of that wizardry.
Yeah. And it's, you know, a lot of coaches within the organization, they kind of just, when you're getting your brown belt, you're essentially a provisionary black belt. So, you know, that was something that added like a lot of anxiety when I got my brown belt.
Like, great, my audition for black. Here we go.
So this is what's going to be expected of me. All these good people. But, you know, you've kind of developed everything where, you know, brown belt's where you're starting to fine tune everything. You're not making a lot of big movements. You're you know, you can kind of funnel people into what you want them to do. Whether it's, you know, as a coach, sometimes I'm funneling people in to seeing how they respond to see if what they've learned sticks. Mm-hmm. Right, so you can kind of subtly, without telling you, hey, grab this, you can get them to make those moves, and you can also start using that to set everything up. So
set up like almost like half of an attack or half of a defense, and just see what the response is.
You're just kind of Jedi mind tricking people into what they want to do. But you know, I see brown belt. There's way less effort in what you're doing, and not to say in like a complacent way, but in more of an efficient way than you know, purple belts. You still see, you know, purple belts. They know everything that they're supposed to do, but they're just, you know, really pushing through, especially when they're, you know, they're so hungry that it's like, oh man, I got to prove myself with these brown belts and black belts here. So. And that's kind of along the lines of that Chris Howder letter is what it was. And he was talking about how he was using Forrest Griffin and, you know, Matt as an example. He's, you know, Forrest Griffin's a giant, you know, competitive athlete, purple belt. And if I needed someone to, you know, back me up in a fight and have them, you know, really, you know, beat someone, even if they're a black belt, of course I'm going to have fucking Forrest behind me. But, you know, if I want someone, you know, that's great. He can beat a black belt. But if I'm going to ask someone, you know, about the nuances of a position, or, you know, the nuances of the pressure that you apply to get someone to react, you know, Forrest isn't going to be the first person I ask. Just because he can do it doesn't mean that he can explain it to me
totally
in that nuanced way. And that's kind of what you'll start seeing more with brown belts and black belts.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can be a very, very good competitor, or just player in jiu-jitsu or anything else, and not necessarily be a good coach. And you can be a good coach, and I mean, that's it's almost like a whole different skill set.
Oh yeah. Well, and there's plenty of people that I think have both into it and both abilities to do it, but they're pulled one way or the other where they're at. And then there's you know, a bunch of I've in traveling and being able to tour with bands and go all over the U.S. and Canada and train at different places. You see people that, you know, they've made their name as a competitor here, and they're, you know, they're just like, oh, well, I guess I've got to do these seminars and open a school, you know, so that I can have this continue to pay my bills. But, you know, maybe they haven't thought of the thing, or of what makes things work, or they just don't have the personality to teach, because you've got to be willing to just kind of accept the fact that you're going to give a little bit more than you're going to take. And you know, there's plenty of days in open mat where I just want to go in and roll and not answer any questions. And
totally,
you have those times where it's like, okay, round's over, ready for the next one, and somebody wants to talk. And it's you can choose in that moment to just think that it's a chore, or it's a bother, or you can kind of be stoked that someone thinks so much of your opinion that they ask it, and I really value those times where someone does, and it's gonna cut in my ability to go and roll and push myself and get a workout maybe, but at the end of the day, I'm not trying to go out and be an adult world champion with people that have nothing else to do than do their strength and conditioning and jiu-jitsu all day. My legacy is going to be what my kids do, what my students do, and kind of those type of things, and that's way more important to that. And it's cool seeing guys like we've got plenty of coaches within the organization, Coach Amanda, Coach Leah, Coach Travis and Coach Frankel went out to Masters Worlds and did well. Meeting a guy like Christian Woodmansey who has a school out in Philadelphia. He was out in Twin Falls a few months ago, and just he's a high-level competitor, but also just really has that heart to teach and instruct, and kind of has that good understanding of keeping a balance between the two things. And I think that's an important thing to kind of realize, and it always frustrates me. I'm really hard when I take a jiu-jitsu class that's not necessarily under taught, but you're just, here's 2 cool moves, now let's go get to rolling. And it's something that I constantly, I film every class that I do in the morning, and I use that to either provide a service for my students so that way they can go back and watch it. But I also use it, a lot like you study your own competition footage and just like, all right, fuck, how could I have not been, a rambling, wordy asshole here? When could I have maybe broken this up to give them more opportunity to kind of, isolate that micro position that maybe has people come in here. And, if I teach like a bunch of weird, silly bullshit like I like in jiu-jitsu, but, do it to somebody that has no context of like an open guard.
Right.
Okay, we're going to do this grip here. Maybe they kind of get it by the end of the class. Like they've awkwardly forced themselves into this space of muscle memory. But when I throw them out into a live situation, they're never going to do it.
No.
So if you give them, your base, your posture, your pressure, how to set that up, and then you give them something that's kind of accessible to everyone from white belt to black belt, and then maybe you give them a little hot sauce at the end, then if they, don't remember the fancy technique, at least they've got a more broad understanding of that position in jiu-jitsu there. And those are the things that I really look for and appreciate in instructors.
Does being an instructor make you better at jiu-jitsu?
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to worry about the things that are most important. And when I'm rolling, you are now an example as far as what you're teaching. So, if I'm going there and telling people to like keep their elbows in and, not roll like a spaz, and I'm out like a fucking octopus, then they're going to look at me and be like, all right, well,
cool.
I'm going to go be an octopus now because you've got a black belt.
Because you're doing it that way.
Yeah.
This is what I see.
But you have to be a lot more thoughtful in what you're doing. And because it's not just your jiu-jitsu that you're affecting, it's other people's. And again, going back to the goal, I want everyone else to get better, improve. I want people to be better than me quicker than I was. And it's little fundamental things that we take for granted. And how many times have you asked somebody, how do you do that? And they're like, I don't know, I just do it.
Totally.
When I was in school, to be an elementary school teacher, one of my favorite classes that I ever took was a elementary math.
Mm-hmm.
So you're teaching, kids how to add, subtract, multiply, things that we can do in our head without even thinking.
Sure.
But you are learning how to communicate to that concept to someone that has absolutely no concept of what basic addition is.
Mm-hmm.
So, where we all struggled for the first week of that class, it was, add 152 plus, 108, whatever the case is. And everybody was like really quickly, bam, 260.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's right.
Sounds right.
And you just write down the answer. When really what you want is you want to show the process of getting there, because the answer is not the thing. It's your ability to find the miscue.
Mm-hmm.
So if a kid gets, 175,
Mm-hmm.
you can look at the process and see where the miscue was.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, man, that's not the wrong answer for where you're at. It's not the answer we're looking for. So let's look how we get there. That's how I approach learning jiu-jitsu, and that's how I approach teaching jiu-jitsu.
Interesting.
To where, if someone's having problems, I want to see what they're doing from the beginning and then find that spot. This is it. This is the exact point where we missed one little thing. Let's change that, and we can do that. It's not the wrong answer, but this is why you're having to work a lot harder than you would have been before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's awesome. Like, you can sit there and watch people do this technique, and then they'll ask a question like, cool, I saw the exact point. Show me. All right, whatever. You're looking in your butterfly suit. Like what I was doing with Matt today,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like initially he loaded me up on his hook, and he didn't pull that elbow in to kind of load my body in. So I have the ability. Could he still sweep me? Yeah, he's, pretty strong, athletic guy. He's got a good understanding of how the sweep works. Maybe it works, but there's a lot more play because he's not connecting me to his hip. He's not sucking everything in. His knees a little further away from his body, so there's more give. So I can start kind of tracking away from where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you hit the sweep there? Yeah, but if somebody's really good, they have good active posts, they've, they're Brandon Hempelman and were a gymnast their entire life, and they just have incredible body control. Like, I need to be able to take that away, so I make that connection. I come in, so you can start kind of seeing those little spots. So that's where I nerd out. Like that's where, I love, people that over-explain. Like Ryan Hall instructionals were always my favorite, because he would just like explain everything to
just all the details.
Oh, and I'd nerd out about that. Some people are just like, oh, just show me the technique. It's like, no, just tell me why everything works.
I want to know all of the details. I have to know about what every foot is doing, what every hand is doing, why your head is on this side, all that crap. I have to know all that.
But on the same turn, not everybody learns the same as you
True
do.
that.
So
absolutely.
While I like being a nerd about every little thing on there, I need to be able to communicate it in a direct way that's keeping people's attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the people that want to nerd out and want more, if you sit there and do a private lesson with me and you want to know every little bit about things, I will nerd out with you, because you've shown me that you're willing to pay me for your time.
Right.
So, I'll give you every little bit of information you want, or even if you just ask me a question during class, like you've shown me, all right, cool. Like you want to know,
Mm-hmm.
You're asking me outside of class time. I hope you have a comfortable chair, because I will repeat things to the point where you're just like, fuck, I shouldn't have asked you a question, Brad.
Just all detail.
Yeah.
All detail. We're part of a pretty big and pretty knowledgeable organization in SBG, which is a great thing to be a part of. Who within the organization inspires you most, or do you look up to? And who outside of the organization do you look up to and inspires you?
Coach Matt, obviously. He's had a big effect on me. Obviously, like, he gave me a sentence that changed the trajectory of the way that I train and I approach my jiu-jitsu.
For sure.
I do not take that thing for granted. Coach Frankel, Coach John Frankel from SBG Korea, I love that man. We get along very well. The way that he communicates information is very much in line with the way that I do. I'm very fortunate to, it's one of those things like, I'll go out when he's here and it's, man, I get to learn jiu-jitsu from this guy. I get to roll jiu-jitsu from this guy. And then afterwards I get to go have beers and like nerd out and talk about jiu-jitsu or life or, brewing beer or like distilling stuff with this guy that, that I look up to. Any of the people within the organization, those two are two that, I feel like I've made a pretty good connection with here. And the relationship I have with Jesse Brock is one of the single most important relationships I've had in my life. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that he's him, Scott Jorgensen, Scott Tomans have created this place that has given me so much in my life and it given me a place to where I can do what I love while also feeding my family and paying my bills is amazing. And really I've learned a ton jiu-jitsu wise from him. Outside of the organization, Christian Woodmansey, who I really just met this year, is a guy that I really look up to. I've made a really good, I like the way he approaches things. I like the way that he communicates here. Paul Schreiner, who's another guy that we had out last year. Mm-hmm. I've always enjoyed his teaching. There's times where the only reason I kept my MG in Action subscription is because I could go to like Paul's fundamental classes and just get gems. And the last time I was in New York City on tour, I wanted to do a private lesson with him, but it was way too early in the tour and more money than I had at the time to do it. But I was pretty fortunate where the class that I took at the academy was one of his classes, just really well communicated, and we kind of talked a little bit after that before I had to run back and get yelled at by my tour manager for being 20 minutes late. But
worth it.
No, totally worth it. But that kind of sparked everything where we got him into the gym, and he came out for a seminar last year, and then afterwards, I think my wife Ryan and I we sat there on the patio of Guernica for like 2.5 hours, just kind of shooting the shit, talking about jiu-jitsu, talking about life here.
That's awesome.
And oddly enough, like, he's a guy that knows John Frankel from years ago, kind of came up in the same town in California. So
interesting.
They kind of know each other a little bit here. So and they approach things in very similar ways. So those are some people that really I look up to and kind of pattern the way I'd like to teach and coach and do what I do.
Interestingly, jiu-jitsu is a sport where like people who do MMA are huge MMA fans. Like, they know who the current champions are, they watch every UFC, yada yada yada. People who play football in high school, they have their favorite team, they've got their favorite players, so on and so forth. Uniquely in jiu-jitsu, not everybody is a fan of the sports side of it. You and I have talked numerous times about this, but you are a fan. You do watch competitions. You do follow some people. Who are some of the people that are currently competing that you really, really like, and why? And maybe some people don't compete anymore, or just some legends from the past that you really enjoy.
I mean, I loved watching Marcelo Garcia do his thing when he was still actively competing, and that was that was one of the big things. Is the first tour I went on, and we were in New York the first day. I was like, I gotta go train at Marcelo Garcia's academy. And funny enough, like the next tour I went, I was in New York, and he was like, "Oh, you were here last summer." And I was like, "Oh my God, Marcelo Garcia remembered that I did a drop-in in his class. I'm just gonna go throw up in the corner now." I like watching Keenan Cornelius. Leangelo. There's a lot of stuff that I like watching that sometimes frustrates me, just because it's dumb. But I also like dumb things. I like. I actually don't like watching the meows anymore. Just they stall a little more than I want, and there's one thing to like play a guard, and there's points where people can kind of stop you from doing what you're doing, but you have to get to a point where I need to move and make them move from here. And I think that a lot of jiu-jitsu, like IBJJF style jiu-jitsu, it just becomes that little I'm gonna do this until I get up on top and get one advantage and come in. I like watching Gary Tonin compete, and especially I think the big thing that won me over is when he did that light heavyweight EBI, and he won it by kind of wrestling and getting top control because he was small and he didn't want to be under giant people. And it kind of showed me that he was one of the more complete grapplers on that whole Danaher thing. And especially it was like, Eddie Cummings has gone from that team here, but I definitely saw him as he's a leg lock guy, but if I can avoid if guys can avoid playing that game, then
agree.
It kind of crumbled a little bit.
Yeah, like his match with Canuto. He just kept his feet away, and that was pretty much it.
Yep. Canuto's another guy I like watching. I like watching Johnny Grippo.
He's had a hell of a year. He's on fire. Speaking of the meows,
dude,
Johnny Grippo is killing it.
And that's the thing. He's kind of started developing his game a little bit beyond, I'm just going to berimbolo you and, look for advantages on there. He's diversified it a little bit more. And, everything goes in waves, and you're seeing a lot less people, spin under for berimbolo. You're seeing a lot more people, especially like Nogi World, you're seeing a lot of people just wrestle, which is cool to a point, and as a shitty wrestler, you see a lot of shitty wrestling matches.
True, but at least the intent is there.
Yeah, I'll make one half-assed attempt before I go to my butt. But yeah, it's cool seeing now that there's not just a lot of people and a lot of high-level athletes competing, but you're also seeing a lot of different rule sets that give people the ability to play differently. And I like more promotions that are going towards a judging of the fight, almost MMA style judging. I know kind of Fight to Win does something like that. Polaris does something like that. Yeah. Because I think with sub only, and it's funny because I just did an EBI style rules tournament. I hate the rule set. It's so fucking dumb. And it's fine. It creates exciting matches, but it also like creates people that play towards that overtime rule set.
Yes.
And you get to watch 10 minutes of something that is incredibly frustrating.
Totally. And
people sitting for legs and not playing jiu-jitsu.
If they can just play the timeout, then they can get a seatbelt or an armbar.
Yeah. There's like the most frustrating thing was, when we went up, when Jesse had his match at Submission Underground, and I got to sit there and coach for 10 minutes and watch Jesse just kind of control the entire match.
Totally.
And then got put into an armbar, and it almost dead to rights armbar, and then I got that armbar, I win.
Yep.
It's like, well, like what are you really learning? And I think it's good. It forces you to do certain things in your jiu-jitsu. I think that the IBJJF is good because it gives you the ability to look for advantageous positions in here. But I also think that, really playing towards that sporty point side of it, allows people to game the system, which is fine. If you realize you're playing a game, then you're going to do everything you can to play the game better than everybody else.
Totally.
But I think that when you have organizations that kind of judge positional dominance, your aggression in hunting for a submission, how well you defend, escape, things like that, you get a lot more of a good, showing of what someone's jiu-jitsu is really, really like. It's those are the events that I think are a little bit more fun to watch for me, because you have that good mix of people pushing the pace, but also not kind of grappling like a idiot.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I used to really like EBI, but then same thing. They just play to the overtime, drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And that's a good point that you made about submission in the ground. I didn't think of that, but I do like the judging, and there's an argument to be made for points. But the counter I would make to the points is, anybody who's going to be in like a judging position of one of those events should probably be educated enough to where they know what the advantageous positions are. I don't necessarily need to assign points to those. I know if you've gotten mount like way more, or you've gotten way more sweeps, or somebody who's really, really educated in superior positions in jiu-jitsu, I think, can watch just a full match and completely ignore the scorecard and say, I know this person won.
Yeah. Well, and you can look at if you happen to grab someone's foot in the right way as they're pulling guard, and that's, on the person that's choosing to put themselves in a bottom position, and they get 2 points, but they spend the entire time, they can't break out that closed guard. They're not getting into a range to where if it was a real fight, if that wants to be your argument, they're not going to hit someone. They're not going to be able to, hit, pin, submit. That's my goal if I'm fighting someone. And if you're in someone's guard and you can't get into a range where you can do any of that, but you're defending against sweeps, submission attempts for 5 to 10 minutes, however long it is, and then you got 2 points because you were able to put them on their back, are you winning? How is this going to go if we would have added another 5 minutes?
Right.
So there's always going to be that little bit of arbitrary argument here, but I think that's what I like it towards the judges things, because then you can take into consideration, well, did they do anything with that takedown? Did they, were they on their heels the entire time, or were they pressing forward?
Fair. Do people need to compete in jiu-jitsu to be successful?
No. I always tell, I think that it's a good idea, because I think competition forces you to dial in your A game. It forces you to be smart about your diet, your conditioning, your things like that. It forces you to, I'm plenty guilty of just kind of playing to play a lot when I'm rolling, but when I'm getting ready to compete, I'm playing to force my A game down somebody else's A game's throat. So it really helps you to get more pointed, more direct with that. And it's scary. You're putting yourself out there. And you're kind of letting your students, your family, whoever, kind of see you in kind of a vulnerable position in there. But I think that's good, because it allows for you to just be a better version of yourself at the end of the day. Win, lose, or draw, it's going to force you to make yourself better. Now, if you just don't want to compete, you can still learn jiu-jitsu, get very proficient. You can get your black belt. But I think that competition gives you a good amount of experience in a very concentrated amount of time that you wouldn't necessarily get. Like, it's high stakes assessment, right? It's the difference between your teacher reading you an assignment and then asking you, man, what was the main character's name? Low stakes, right?
Right.
Cool. Where did I put that post? On their arm. Cool. You're listening to me. That's low stakes. I know you have an understanding. But you get that. This is your final exam. You weren't expecting it because we're halfway through the semester. This is going to be worth 75% of your grade. Like, fuck, I have to be ready. And it really kind of puts that, how do I react to stress? You still have high stakes assessment in jiu-jitsu when you compete. It's stress testing what you know, and you may have a deficiency that you had no idea about, because you tend to fall into those positions where in the gym, whether you want to or not, you roll with someone and you play the game that you play. They're going to do this, I'm going to do this, blah blah blah, unless they're like really pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, or trying something new. Like, you usually fall in the same game. When you compete, it's someone that you don't know what they do. They could be from another school that plays stylistically completely different from you. They could just be personality wise very stylistically different from the people that you normally compete against. So how does my game show up to that? And that's why it's so funny when have you noticed people when they come up to you like, oh man, I Facebook stalked my people in brackets?
Totally. Absolutely. I've definitely heard that.
Why are you doing that?
Totally.
Who cares?
Totally.
You just do what you're gonna do. The fact that that guy looks really strong doesn't fucking matter.
Totally. I'm guilty of that. I have done that in the past, and the irony was, my estimation was totally the opposite. I was like, this is a match I gotta like stretch for and make sure, and like that match was totally fine. And then the other match, I was like, oh man, this guy, and that's the guy that beat me.
Oh yeah, my first match is brown belt. To my only match is brown belt. That's totally the way that it went. And it's just like, oh man, like, why did I even worry? It doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, in hindsight, there was no point to it.
Yeah, and you're so worked up because you've put them, whether you put them on a pedestal or kind of brush them off, like, it shouldn't matter. You should still be doing everything you can to do your best here. Like, my son had his last, he did an extended wrestling season, and he had his last competition out in Meridian a couple weeks ago, and he went in, and apparently we signed him up. There's like a beginner, intermediate, advanced option on track wrestling, which I don't think had any sort of effect on it. But Daryl, my wife, she put intermediate. She's like, oh, well, this is second year wrestling. He's done jiu-jitsu. Like, in any jiu-jitsu tournament we do, intermediate's 2 years. Right. But like, it would have been like 5 years or whatever. And then on top of that, like, when he weighed in, he was 2 pounds over. So he should have competed at 115, and I think he was at like 125 or whatever the next one. Dude, he had like a big farm kid from Parma and Melba. Jeez. that he wrestled against, which I was mad about. It's like, oh man, I wish I would have been there when you went to go weigh in, because I would have made you run for 30 minutes.
Sweat it off.
So that way you're at the top of the weight class rather than that. But he had his first match and just got smothered by this kid. Like, it was quick. I felt so bad. And he came back and we were talking. He's like, oh, I'm in this weight, and like, you put intermediate. And I looked at the brackets. Like, there's not an intermediate bracket. You're just in your weight. Like, you can approach this one of two ways. The kids are going to be bigger than you. A lot of them have, this is not their second year wrestling. They've probably been wrestling here. You can go in with, I'm gonna lose. There's not, I shouldn't even bother going out there. Or you can go in with the mindset of, I'm gonna wrestle, or I'm gonna do jiu-jitsu as good as I possibly can. I'm gonna make sure my posture, I'm gonna make sure that my fundamentals are so good that even if someone's bigger and better than me, it doesn't matter. And that's the cool thing to me about jiu-jitsu is if I'm doing everything right, if someone's bigger than me or better than me, they should have, posture is kind of a sum of 100% thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has like, we both have great posture. Like, if you're boxing, you both can have a good stance. And
Totally.
then here, usually that percentage is off. But, I'm going to go out and do as well as I can. If I lose, then, I wasn't supposed to lose it. They're bigger than me. Who cares? They've had more experience. But, if you go out there and you beat them, you're playing with house money right now. Like, you should feel really good about that. And at the end of the day, I'm not gonna, whether it's my son, my student, or hopefully other people are thinking that about myself. Like, if you go out and do the best that you can in that situation, and you just get ruined, then who cares? Like, you were doing everything the way you should. Maybe it wasn't your day. Maybe you had a miscue. But we can work from there. If you go out there defeated before you go in and just don't allow yourself to do the things that you're supposed to do, then what's the point? It's I think that the competition can help you a lot with your mindset, because I look at that a lot in my life, and approaching my own anxieties and things like that is if I let those things kind of creep in and tell me that everything's wrong and that I shouldn't be doing this, then they'll get the best of me, and there's definitely days where they do, but it's that constant act of being aware and focusing on that makes it a lot easier.
Nice. I think that's an important thing for people to hear about competition, and especially about losing. Like, people are so afraid to lose, and I think that's normal. I think that comes from very normal places, but at the same time, it's not a cliche thing to brush off to say you lost. Like, literally no one gives a shit.
Yeah. You might, especially,
we're proud of you. We don't care.
Yeah. You're a super competitive person. You want to win. You should go into competition wanting to win.
Totally.
Because otherwise, whatever. But I think that there's a lot of other benefits that it can have. Nick is going to compete for the first time next week at Grappling Industries, and we were having a beer, did a private lesson, and we were just kind of talking. It's like, man, like, what kind of changed? He did an in-house tournament. He's like, I don't know if it's something I want to do. And he just looked at me. He's like, I thought about it, and it scared me. And I was all, I should do it because, why not? But why is this scaring me? It shouldn't. It's the same thing that I do multiple times during the week, just with different person.
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah, it's totally the same. If you could do a one-day seminar with yourself as a blue belt, what would you do? What would you talk about? What would you cover?
This dead air is real good for the podcast.
It's fine. We're gonna fill it with music.
Cool.
Just the Jeopardy tune.
It's man. I think it would be a lot of. Myself as a blue belt, and especially with the way that we trained and the way that I know that I rolled as a blue belt, it would be a lot of kind of what I went over this week in my cap classes, just surviving posture from mount, posture from being under someone's side control, and learning how to be safe because my posture's there, and efficiently escape and efficiently put myself in the best situation to look to start, building my game and submissions. Because I think a lot of my white to blue belt, I noticed that I started having more success when I was just upping a pace. Like, I was keeping a pace faster than other white belts. They had to react to me, and then, I would end up in good positions there, which is good, but I'm moving so fast and I'm not very deliberate in my movements. So I'm just tired all the time. And I definitely left myself open a lot. I think those are things that to me right now are super important, just because, I told students this week, I want you to be able to be in a bad position because it's going to happen. And I want you to be able to escape in a way to where you used way less energy than the person on top, and you're putting yourself in a better situation to sweep, submit, and transition. So I think those are the type of things that I would focus on that, and then just like, slow down, you asshole.
Stop training like an asshole.
You're going to hurt yourself and then not be able to train for 3 months, and it's going to still affect you 7 years later. Totally.
You talked about it a little bit earlier, how personality is a huge determining factor on what your style is going to be like. I think Hodger Gracie said style is just a matter of your body type and your personality. That's pretty much going to dictate what your style is like. And you were talking about that earlier. What are you working on right now?
What am I working on right now?
For you personally, not so much something maybe that you're teaching, but just what are you working on for your jiu-jitsu right now?
I'm fucking playing worm guard right now because it's stupid. It's fucking stupid, but it's stupid and effective. And again, I don't want to, the whole philosophy we have in this organization is I want to make sure that my jiu-jitsu is not going to fall apart if the gi comes off.
Sure.
So obviously that's a very grip dependent game.
100%.
I want to make sure my game's not falling apart if punches are introduced. Obviously there's a lot of weird shit that I'm going to do when someone's not punching me. But I'm also at a point in my jiu-jitsu life where I want to find puzzles and I want to play around with stuff, because again we will have people that are competing in IBJJF events, and I don't think that we have a lot of really dynamic guard players in our gym. We've definitely got quite a few, but I think that's not a big focus on what we do here. So doing something that's going to kind of help gain a little bit better understanding of that. And at the end of the day, I've got a tool. You're wearing clothes that I can grab onto, and I can get any sort of a grip to put myself in an advantageous position, to break down your posture, to submit you, to sweep you. It's always funny to me when people go in and they're like, I'm going to train in the gi, but I'm only going to do no gi grips.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's why.
Why would you do that?
Going back to, the creative and the scientific critical thinker type people, that limits both of those things. Yeah, I have absolutely so many things that I can do and play with and see how someone reacts or how I get put into either a better or worse position. Why wouldn't I play with that? Now, I have the knowledge, like the fundamental knowledge now, where if I take my gi off, I'm not going to just instantly play that game.
Right.
I'll my game doesn't really fundamentally change from gi on, gi off. I do a couple things different.
Just modify.
Yeah, you roll with me gi and no gi. There's some things that I'll do in the gi that when I have them on there, but am I a completely different person? Do I like Clark Kent?
It's a modified version of what you do.
Yeah, and same thing if punches are involved. If I'm feeling like I want to go get punched in the head and do Monday roll punch, it's just another tool that I can use when I can strike someone. I don't, and that's the funniest thing to me. It's why I like jiu-jitsu ruined watching MMA for me.
Same.
It's when people just completely forget fundamental jiu-jitsu because they can start throwing punches, and you're just like, what are you doing, man?
It doesn't change.
Yeah, you just have a different tool that opens up more opportunities for you. So to me, it's worm guard's fun because there's a lot of things that that translate and I feel have made my open guard game a little bit more better. It's given me a good conceptual understanding of it, and it's just fun to do something different. Like I put myself out there. I've been passed and smashed a lot more in the last month of playing something completely new that I've never done before than I have in a couple months, and it's fun.
And it's been great.
Yeah. nobody wants to give me their lapels anymore. So then other things open up, which is great.
At the start of our round, I was really tempted to just like walk up and just like undo my lapels and be like, just all right, here we go.
Just take it.
I'm just gonna start here. They're gonna come out anyway. I really think it's fun playing the lapel stuff because when you grab a collar, everybody just goes, yeah, okay. You grab a sleeve, yeah, okay. You grab like the bottom of someone's lapel and they just go, what the fuck?
they do, and even if they
literally.
So why are you even grabbing this? What are you, or like when, now it's putting my feet on the shoulders. And normally, like if you play spider guard, you're putting everything in the bicep or you're putting feet in the hips and you put them on the shoulders and their arms are just out here like this. What are you doing? This is fucking stupid.
What is this?
So again, going back to jiu-jitsu as a part of your personality and trolling, that's the other reason why it was so enticing to me, because I'm like, oh man, there's going to be people that are just so frustrated and so bummed out about what I'm doing that I have to at least invest a little bit of time into doing this, because it's so funny. And like my morning class, it kind of started, we have a blue belt, Toby, he started playing with lapels, and he's totally the guy that like I know he used to skateboard, and he definitely was the type of guy that would like watch a skate video and see somebody do a trick, and then within like 3 hours he would just do it.
It's like, oh, I'm gonna do that.
Like within 2 weeks of getting invited to cap level classes, he's rolling, he's just darsing people. Perfect. And like great darces. I was like, I didn't teach any fucking darces. Stop watching the internet, Toby, you asshole.
Internet jiu-jitsu. So again.
So he started playing. It's like, all right, man, you're gonna start doing this, and I'm gonna start doing it. And now everybody in the morning's like, oh, I don't want to deal with these lapels. I don't want to do anything else. Everybody's immediately sitting to guard so that I can't play, which is fine. I'll pass your guard.
Yeah, honestly, that's still fine.
I'll pass your guard and then let you get into a position where maybe you end up on top and I have a lapel, and then...
Well, look at that. And here we are. Dang it.
But yeah, that type of stuff is fun for me. And then, I love watching instructionals and stuff like that. And that's another, going back to, people teaching. There's nothing worse than like buying an instructional. They're garbage instructor. And you just, how you try to figure it out and just like, okay, this looks like this is the most important thing. Now you're trying to, now it's becoming less of a, I'm going to take some knowledge in, and now it's you're doing a puzzle, and it becomes so frustrating. It's just like, why wouldn't you just say it this way? You just stop watching it.
Totally.
But I think that it's fun. It's, I watch a lot of matches. I watch a lot of, instructionals. I'm a nerd for the knowledge that you can get. It's, that type of stuff is fun for me. There's a reason we do jiu-jitsu. If you didn't like it, it's the shittiest hobby to have. You just like, I just imagine someone that just isn't like completely enamored by jiu-jitsu. They're just going through the front door, just like, fuck, I have to go get my workout in today.
Why do I do this?
Tim's here today, or whoever. It's like, this is gonna suck. It's like, and then you're looking for the one person that maybe you can kind of just wreck, and it's like, okay, well, at least 5 minutes of my day will be okay.
I can crush this person and feel like I've accomplished something.
And then they smash you, and you're just like, I'm
leaving.
Cry in the shower.
Fuck you guys. Yeah, I totally geek out on it too. It becomes a problem of like bandwidth. Like, I can't take in all of the information that I want to at the same time. I wish I could just take all my instructionals and just matrix them into my brain.
You have to, like, I think anymore it's, I've got to commit a fair amount of time to just, if this is something that I want to do, I'm gonna commit time to actually doing it. And there are sometimes where I'll look at instructionals and I'll go through and just, wherever I'm at in what I'm playing, I'll just say, I'll come back to this here. But I think if you really want to kind of get better, it's just like, seminar. It's you decide this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm interested in. And I'm going to, for better or for worse, I'm going to put myself in situations where I'm going to fail. I'm going to, have to figure it out there. And then, that bandwidth is an important thing. Is if I'm trying to pull myself in two different directions, you're not going to get better. It's, you have to kind of focus it on that one thing. And then when you feel comfortable, when that, feels like it's more intuitive, then you can start moving on from there.
Is it best for people to, because when you go to class and that's all you do, and you get those people who maybe aren't as geeked out, or for whatever reason the only time they can go is during class, you're somewhat subject to, or maybe even entirely subject to, whatever the instructor is teaching in that class. And they maybe mount top one week and then guard bottom the next week, and then it might be Kimuras the next week, and so forth. Is it almost better to continue to do that, but on the side, like pick one thing to just really focus on, or is it better to just sort of take a little bit of everything that comes at you?
I think it's depending on where you're at. If you are in a position where you're pretty fundamentally sound from most everywhere in jiu-jitsu, then start looking to specialize and develop your game. That's a big portion of a blue belt's career is how do I get into a spot that I have some go-to moves. I have my A game position here. So the only way that you're going to do that is finding that opportunity to specialty train to isolate what you're doing. And if you want to get better, you need to put more effort into it. You can be a very good jiu-jitsu player, just by going to class. You'll learn, you'll get better, you'll get your rolls in. But if you find something you want to improve at, search it out, and then use your open mat time, not just to roll around, get sweaty,
see if you can win.
Yeah, but cool. I want to get better at spider guard. You're not going to get better at spider guard slapping hands, starting from your knees, and then jumping to half guard. And then maybe at 3 minutes into that round, I get a spider guard grip, and then I get passed all of a sudden, and I go, well, fuck, I'm never going to get better at spider guard. Well, yeah, you spent 5 seconds of a 5-minute round in that spot, and you never put yourself back there. Isolated training is the key. And if I sweep you, then I go right back. Like, what was I doing earlier today with both Jose and Jill? I would get my sweep, and then I'd go right back to get my lapel and playing there. It's I've got 5 minutes. Let's see where all the problems are gonna be. Let's see where are they sweeping me. How am I successfully off balancing people? If I get a sweep and I can hold it, cool, let's go back. If I get a submission from there and I get it, cool, let's go. It might be an issue where if I get swept or get passed, now I have to play from the bottom. That's fine. But anytime that I can put myself in a position to get better where I'm at, I'm going to do.
Perfect. So, I mean, a lot of years in it, a lot of accomplishments in it, both as a student, a coach, an athlete, gym management, competitor, etc. Begs the question, what's next?
Just keep what I'm doing. Eventually the goal is looking to kind of expand what we do with SBG Idaho and have something that's going to be my own. I like being able to manage gym. I like being able to coach, but there's some part of me that wants to be able to do that. So that's kind of hopefully what I'm looking to do within the next little bit of time. And I don't know, man. It's just keep doing what I'm doing. I'm like in that small percentage of the world that has your your hobby, your job, and your passion, all in that little.
It's a very
center.
small Venn diagram.
Yeah.
It's very tight.
Yeah.
Isn't that the dream, though?
Yeah. It's
To have that all just kind of be the same thing.
And on bad days where it's, I feel like I could be doing a better job as a manager, or like I didn't coach as well as I wanted, or like, you're sitting there sending a bunch of emails or doing stuff that's boring, and you're just like, oh, this sucks. There's nothing worse than like sitting in the office and then watching everybody train. You're just like, I want to be out there. But I'm also in a fortunate position where I got to train, I got to teach, and now I'm helping make this community kind of thrive and be what it is. So, it's hard to be mad when, I could be working at a call center, I could be framing houses, I could be
Never again.
yeah, never again, man. Ugh.
Never again.
Yeah.
What's next for just the upcoming short-term future for the gym? That's awesome that you're looking into and being passionate about expanding and starting your own location. That's something to really look forward to. I'm excited for that. What's just on the short list of what's going on at either the gym or just in the close-knit jiu-jitsu world?
We've got Grappling Industries here in Boise. We've got a lot of people that are competing this next week, which I'm really excited. There's a lot of people that are competing for the very first time, which is, it's always kind of cool to watch as a coach, like / stressful. I always get way more like stressed out watching my students, my kids compete than I do.
Does it kind of feel like they're the same? Like when your students go out, you get the same feeling as your kids?
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. That's there's sometimes more tears with my kids sometimes, but
Sometimes.
but it's the exact, they're essentially my jiu-jitsu kids.
True.
True. You've got them raised up. We've got Coach Matt coming out in April, which I'm really excited for. Those are my favorite seminars of the year. We've got the Northwest Submission Challenge that we run every year here in Boise, which is the biggest submission grappling tournament here in the state of Idaho. That's always a big undertaking and commitment of time. So, we just try to do everything we can to continue having the best experience for all of our competitors, and every year I just try to do what we can to make it bigger and better than the last one. And ultimately just doing those things to help grow the scene and community here in Boise. Again, we're gonna have our home base. I've got my team, and I've got we're a part of the best martial arts organization in the world, without question. But that doesn't mean that if you train elsewhere that I think you suck. We're all a community. The better that we can, the more successful everybody is here, the better it's going to be as a whole, and the more successful that everyone's going to be as a whole.
For sure. Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. What's the dates for all this stuff?
Grappling Industries is March 16th.
16th sounds right. Yeah.
That's Saturday.
Next Saturday.
That'll competition itself starts at 9 a.m. I don't know whether this will be before or after that. Whatever. If you win, it was great. Everybody did good. We've got a big dinner plate.
Great job, everyone.
Coach Matt will be here April 13th and 14th. That's available to anybody. So if you train elsewhere, you can get registered either at SBG Idaho, or if you go to the store link from our website, you can register for that. That's $100 for 2 days of training. It'll be 10 to 3 both days with a lunch in between. And then the Northwest Submission Challenge is April 27th. We're doing a 1-day tournament this year. So adults, kids will all compete the same day. We'll have day of weigh-ins. We'll have night before weigh-ins. Those are done without the gi. So you can weigh in, get rehydrated, feel good to compete. If you a lot of the seminar, we're gonna have a busy summer of seminars. I know we'll have Coach Frankel back. Paul Sharp's gonna come out to do another seminar. talking to other people to bring out or bring back out here. So those are all available. If you go to our SBG Idaho Facebook page, we'll always post the events and what they hear.
Awesome. That's exciting. Well, normally I ask, how do people follow you if they want to follow you? But you're in Instagram jail right now.
Listen, I've got an Instagram. If you want to follow me, let me see how it's spelled out right now.
I got B dot and it fills in the rest.
Yeah, B dot T0 dot the dot rad. If you see like 4 pictures, that's me. I've got a YouTube channel somewhere if you want to see some, all right instructionals. Really embarrassed. They just posted that video of all the SBGs across the world. Mm-hmm. Like they used a video from one of my instructionals from it. It's like, fuck, they found my YouTube. That's super embarrassing.
That's hilarious.
I do have for all students, if you find me on Facebook, I've got classes archived. Some of them I've shared to my Facebook page. Some of them are just part of our closed group. Eventually I'll feel confident enough to put them on a YouTube page and put myself out there, but it's, you always hate.
I think we would all appreciate that.
And again, always feel free to ask questions and that if you see me at the gym, I'm pretty open, available for lessons and all that good stuff. I'm really bad at putting myself out there.
Self-advertising?
Oh yeah. Jaime yelled at me once. He's like, you've just got to, put yourself out there more. I was like, I know, but I have a hard time with my self-worth.
Jaime's a great self-advertiser.
Oh man,
he is very into the shit that he does.
He's got it to spare, so if he can just give a little bit to me.
Yeah, bottle it and sell it, man.
And I don't even have to do anything. I just sprinkle a little bit on something and then put it out in the world. Just sprinkle it on my Facebook pages.
Just a little bit, just a dusting. Any parting shout-outs?
Man, obviously all the other coaches at SBG Idaho. My wife Daryl, who's beyond incredibly supportive and calling right now. So thank you for letting me kind of do what I do. It was something that when we first started dating, she didn't kind of know how to think. She had some bad experience with people training and just having that take over their life.
Mm-hmm.
But for her to see the passion that I have and realize that we can make this work for everybody. I would not be where I'm at professionally. I wouldn't have the focus. I had some focus, but I credit her for being able to have a black belt, being able to be as focused as I am as a coach, as a manager, as I am. So to her, kids, and then just anybody that's given me the opportunity. Carl and all the people at Proving Grounds Invitational to give me an opportunity to compete here a couple weeks ago, and just any coach within the organization that's helped me out. And you guys, thanks for letting me come and talk for way longer than most people talk on there.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, man. We appreciate having you. It's good to just get you out and kind of pick your brain and hear about your journey and your life with jiu-jitsu. I know I'm a huge fan. I mean, I nerd out on jiu-jitsu, and it's fun to have the fighters that we've had, but it's kind of fun to just talk some pure jits.
Dude, it's so fun. It's so fun. Teaching the 6 o'clock class was so fun. Being able to just nerd out over little things on there. I always feel bad when I take you away from the boxing class for 10 minutes.
It's fine. It's totally fine. I'm okay with it.
It's where the other coaches are there. They'll be all right. You're focused in the moment.
Exactly. I'm just, we're finishing up. We got to do a thing. We're focusing on the details of this grip or this movement or whatever.
Listen,
Freddie's got it.
Let me show you the nerdiest thing about a scissor sweep. Done.
It's all about this foot.
Yeah.
This foot hooking right
Yeah.
there. That's great, man. I geek out. Appreciate your time as always. Thanks for coming and hanging out, man.
Yeah, thank you.